Let's play a shitty game. Now, I'm part of the minority in the video game community. I do not play a lot of shooter games. I've played a few old school shooters like Dread vs. Death and the Dark Forces series. I'll play Team Fortress 2 every now and then, but only against bots because online players piss me off.
It's a condition called being a cynical asshole.
And start shooting at them, you can expend an entire magazine and still not kill one bad guy. For some inexplicable reason, I am shooting directly at this guy and I'm not hitting him. And what's sad is the game makes a point of saying that your aim is much more accurate if you shoot from behind cover. I just can't get too into a game where whether I hit an enemy or not depends on if the game is in a good mood and feels like registering my bullets hitting him. Your standard weapon is a P99 pistol, not Bond's signature Walther of characters doing stuff. We don't even see pictures of the characters doing stuff. We see dots on a map with names next to them, and we're told that the characters are doing stuff. This is as cheap in terms of storytelling as games can get. The cutscenes in Iron Man 2 were done better than this. Now, there are at least 2 points in the game where the anonymous guy watching the recordings literally fast forwards to the next interesting part of the story. I'm not kidding about that. It's like when I watch Star Wars Episode 2 and I keep going, nah, this part's boring, let's go to the next part that has Ewan McGregor in it. Anyway, it turns out that Mr. White is working for some organization called Quantum, but he escapes and then Ewan McGregor in it. Anyway, it turns out that Mr. White is working for some organization called Quantum, but he escapes and then, for some reason, I'm not sure why, Bond starts going after a general who is trying to take over Bolivia and some guy called Nathaniel Green, who is also working with Quantum. Why Quantum is helping the general is never adequately explained. I typically have difficulty following the stories of James Bond movies to begin with. Mostly all I know when I watch a Bond film is, this is bad guy, this is also bad guy, and this is girl that Bond is trying to shag. So the fact that this game takes the plots of 2 Bond films, abridges them both, and then swirls them together doesn't do this game any favors in terms of being coherent. What screws up the story of the game even more is the way the story is structured. The game has 15 levels. The first 4 are from Quantum of Solace, the second movie. Then Bond has a really long flashback, and the next 10 levels are taken from Casino Royale, the first movie. And then Bond's flashback ends, and the last level is the finale of Quantum of Solace. I understand that they arranged the levels this way so that you can play through the climaxes of both films one after the other, but that doesn't change the fact that this game is basically structured with the middle of the story at the start and the start of the story at the middle. You spend 4 levels going after Green, then you spend 10 levels on a completely different story, and when the flashback finally ends, you've completely forgotten who Green is and why you're trying to kill him. Each level in the game pretty much works the same way. You run through a stage until you come across a few chest-high, and while he's out of cover, the vast majority of your bullets still miss. Hell, you can lock onto gas cans and other exploding objects that are stationary and shoot them, and it still takes several shots to hit those objects. The game's lock-on mode is unable to consistently hit motionless targets. If, on the other hand, you get out of cover and aim the damn gun yourself, you can down an entire room without having to reload. If you're out of cover and you aim with the iron sights, your gun is perfectly accurate and you don't have the bullcrap problems of your bullets mysteriously not hitting the guy you're aiming directly at. Heck, if you've got a sniper rifle, you can even shoot guys while they're in cover, which pretty much breaks the game because you can clear out rooms in a couple of seconds. I almost think the game screws with your accuracy on purpose just to tie one arm behind your back and artificially increase the game's difficulty. Every time on cameras or sneak around enemy patrols without getting spotted. To get past cameras, you have to sneak around a room until you find and shut off a fuse box. If you shoot the camera, you immediately set off an alarm. So how come shutting off the camera doesn't set off an alarm, but shooting it does? Either way, the camera goes dead. What's the damn difference? But I really hate when you have to sneak around enemy patrols because most of the enemies that you have to sneak around are out of sight, a lot of the enemies are impossible to see coming, and frankly it seems like an alarm usually sounds the nanosecond that you kill an enemy or move out of cover anyway. I feel like the game has one very specific idea of what you're supposed to do, and the game punishes you if you don't do exactly, down to the last minor detail, what the game expects you to do. And I keep screwing up the stealth sections and having to fight elite guards because I can't figure out the stringent go here and shoot this guy at this exact precise second plan that the game has laid out for me. And yeah, maybe that's realistic for being a secret agent and you get detected for making one minuscule mistake, but it's not fun that the game punishes you for not being psychic. Now, I actually don't mind getting stormed by elite guards because elite guards tend to carry better weapons. I'm sorry, marginally better weapons because all of the guns are the same in this stupid game. And since shooting from out of cover basically breaks the game's combat system, the elite guards usually are just a nuisance that drops tons of ammo. There are a few special levels in the game that really get on my nerves. The game has 15 levels. In 2 of them, you do not get a gun. In one of the levels, you just run through the stage with no time limit and basically no way to die. And in one of the levels, you have to run to Bond's car with blurry vision being cruddy controls because you've been poisoned. At the end of the level, hold up in a 2-level. Oops! The level that pisses me off most in this game is the Shanty Town level. At the end of this level, Bond and worthless unnamed support character hold up in a 2-level house and you have to fight off a swarm of enemies that attack you from 3 different directions. And you have extremely little health and die if you take just a few bullets. Does anybody want to apply some deductive reasoning to this situation? Because enemies come at you from 3 different directions at once, as soon as you pop out to shoot one guy, you immediately get shot from off-screen and die. It doesn't help that the level is so poorly designed that you can't see enemies around the scenery until crap. You can't even see enemies until after they've started shooting you. Damn it! The only way to beat this level, The only way to beat this level is to die about 8 times and gradually memorize where all of the enemies come from. Realistic? Yes, but fun? Put your lips to my ass and French kiss it, you pile of... And before you reach to type me a message saying, of course the game sucks, you're playing it on the Wii because someone always does, I should point out that Quantum of Solace is exactly the same on all 3 consoles. This shitty game is just as shitty on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The only thing that's different between the versions is the game's multiplayer and the game's graphics. At least, I hope the graphics are different across the 3 consoles because the Wii version is ugly as hell. The people look like they're made of clay and they have these weird fish mouths. If you get close enough to an enemy, you see a giant dumb grin on the enemy's face. And all of the surfaces in all of the environments are smooth and mostly devoid of to try something new. So I chose Titanic Mystery, and I chose wrong. I chose very, very wrong. I tell you this now with no hyperbole. Titanic Mystery is one of the worst games that I have ever played. Point to any game that I've reviewed on this little channel of mine. I would rather play Batman Vengeance. I would rather play Dark Tomorrow. I would rather play Superman 64 beginning to end without my Game Shark than play Titanic Mystery a second time. This thing is an atrocity. This thing should not be played. This thing isn't a game. It's a piece of shit and it deserves to die! The story of the game is pretty simple. To mark the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, a new ship called the Titanic II is commissioned and sets out on a maiden voyage with several descendants of the original Titanic passengers. You know, the ones that didn't experience horrible deaths of drowning and hypothermia. Anyway, your completely anonymous character goes to his room aboard the ship and finds a letter warning him that... Okay, that first puzzle was freaking stupid, but maybe now is where I can travel around the ship gathering clues and interrogating crew members and trying to deduce who the bomber is. So I go to the new area, the radio room, and guess what? The radio room is another giant picture filled with Photoshop shit, and now I have to find 10 telephones, another 12 random objects, and 3 more parts of an inventory item. And this is where an awful realization sank in. This is all the game is. This is all you do throughout the entire game. All the game is looking at pictures cluttered with random smaller pictures and clicking on the random items until you find the ones the game is asking for. Wait, is that a skull? Who the hell super glued a human skull to the back of this chair? These pictures make no sense! Every single level in the game is you looking at what I'm sure is a lovely recreation of the environment from the Titanic with random crap pasted all over it. You find 10 of one item, 12 random items, and 3 pieces of an inventory item that you need to access a puzzle. Once you solve the puzzle, the level ends and you move on to the next level where you just do all of that crap again on a different screen. I was expecting an adventure game going around the ship, gathering clues and trying to solve a mystery, and what I got was I Spy Titanic Edition. The game is so damn boring. Every level is exactly the same. You look at a cluttered pile of crap and you click on whatever items the game is asking for. Most of the items can be found by just randomly clicking everywhere on the screen because the game doesn't penalize you for incorrect guesses of where an item is. The items that you don't find by clicking randomly, you have to find by searching the screen, which is very tedious and boring. The gameplay isn't stimulating, it's just dull. Click around until you found everything the game is looking for, and then you click some more. If you're having difficulty Again, it doesn't happen all the time, so I'm guessing that when it does happen, it's because of a game glitch. It's just, does this even qualify as gameplay? The game asks you for an item and you click around until you find it with absolutely no penalty for screwing up. This isn't stimulating. This doesn't require thought. You just look at a picture and you click on it. This is as much gameplay as navigating the menus on a DVD is gameplay. And the game even has a multiplayer mode, so you can have a friend clicking around looking for random objects along with you. Doesn't that sound like fun? The only parts of the game that actually resemble a game are the puzzles at the end of each level. There actually is a lot of variety to the puzzles, to the game's credit, but the diary is pretty much the only part of the story that even qualifies as being a story. The game gives you 6 suspects of who the bomber could be. The captain, a musician, your steward, a reporter, the bartender, or the doctor. But I'd be damned if I could actually tell you anything about a single one of those characters. The game tells you nothing about who any of these characters are. It tells you nothing about these people's personalities. All of these characters are completely anonymous. I don't know any of these people. You have a brief dialogue with one of the characters before each level, but every single line that these people spout is just trivia about the original Titanic. You don't interact with any of these characters because every time you talk to one, they just say, "Hey, did you know that only 3 of the 4 smokestacks on the Titanic were functional? The 4th was added as a good luck charm like a 4-leaf clover. Guess it didn't work out for them, huh?" The game goes out of its way to make sure that you know absolutely nothing about any of these characters because none of these characters do anything except puke Titanic factoids on you. Sure, the Titanic information is fascinating, but there is no kind of narrative woven around these facts. It's just the game lecturing you about the Titanic. And by the way, the name of the band that's playing aboard the ship is the Icebergs. I know they thought they were being clever, but I'm pretty sure that if a band called the Icebergs tried to perform aboard the Titanic too, they would get the shit slapped out of them. One of the early dialogues with the captain tells you that his grandfather was a child aboard the Titanic and that he and his mother traveled in 3rd class. I pretty much figured then and there that the captain had to be the bomber because he's obviously a descendant from William in the diary, but then later in the game you find out that you're the descendant of William, something your character knows from the start of the game. Some people might call that a shocking plot twist, but I call it, why the hell don't I know anything about my own character? Did my character at no point realize that he was reading his great-grandmother's diary? Did he never stop to muse upon that fact? Your character never speaks. He never interacts with the other characters. He just gets talked at by other people. You never hear a single thought that runs through your character's head. He doesn't consider maybe trying to catch the bomber rather than just running to every damn room on the ship looking for diary pages. Your main character isn't a character! Pretty much the only thing you learn about the suspects is that each of them is descended from a surviving passenger aboard the original Titanic. The only 2 characters descended from characters who could arguably be in... Because the game regularly forces you to replay levels that you've already completed. The only difference being that you have to find 12 different completely random objects than you did the first time. Hell, on my playthrough, I was forced through a few of the levels 4 times! 4 times! This game is already about as lazy can possibly get since each level is exactly 1 screen, and now the game is recycling levels! You couldn't even be bothered to Photoshop enough pictures together to fill out the game, so you're forcing us to spend more than half the game visiting levels we've already beaten? That's bullshit! And get this, the game tells you that it has 30 puzzles. What it doesn't tell you is that most of the puzzles are puzzles that you've already completed with different solutions. You play Othello with red and blue pieces, then later you play Othello with silver and gold pieces, and that's treated as being 2 separate puzzles. I swear to God, this game is setting a new record for how little effort you can put into making a video game. The only redeeming factor to this game is that the story told in the diary is really good. But here's the thing. Developer 2 said, "Sounds great, what's the gameplay going to be like?" And Developer 1 replied, "Shit, we have to have gameplay?" That's the only explanation I can think of for how this game got made, because Titanic Mystery is not a video game, it's a history lecture. Games are called games because you play them. You do not play Titanic Mystery, you look at it. You look at it, it lectures you, and then you look at it some more. There is no game here. My run through the game took about 4 hours, and it felt like 4 weeks because the game is so non-stimulating and repetitive that time just ceased to exist. Making a game in memoriam of the Titanic is a nice idea, it's a noble intention, but if you're going to make a game based off the Titanic, then actually make a game! Don't half-heartedly cobble together a non-existent story with completely useless gameplay. Oh, sorry, I had to call that gameplay because it's not gameplay, because then you're just insulting the people you're selling a product to. The fact that the game is built around solving puzzles and the game gives you the option of skipping every single one of the puzzles pretty much tells you that the people who made this game didn't set out to make a game. They set out to make a documentary and they disguised it as a game. And the fact that they put so little effort into this game and